That's Jason Emro again. NMU IS 301, still working on raising the bar. Microsoft strategy. This is part two. We talked a little about tight OS application integration. That was used as a very, very effective business tactic to dominate the market and to kind of shove off competition. We'll talk about a few more, and then we'll talk a little bit about some of the results of some of these things. Okay, Office suites. Microsoft was not the first one to come up with the somewhat integrated Office suite. That was something innovated in other places. Several companies were coming up with Office suites. Many of them very much had features that Microsoft didn't. In some ways, perhaps more compelling, but in the end, it really didn't matter. Microsoft was good about, not good is interesting from a business standpoint. They were good in sitting on stuff that they considered its intellectual property, where everybody else said, hey, why aren't you sharing ways that our software can integrate more with your operating system? And they didn't, because they said, well, that's proprietary information. We want to take advantage of that. We're not going to share that with the likes of you. This was very different from in the beginning of microcomputing. That's what became personal computers and the kind of computers we have today. In the old days, the very beginning of microcomputing and mainframe computing before, these things weren't important. Sharing was very open. And that's really where open source software comes from, is the fact that in the very beginning, computers were the hardware. One of the biggest players, and the one that still survives today and still does big hardware, is IBM. And IBM was very much the hardware company. They would sell you the hardware. They would throw in the software for free, and they would share all the technical details of it. Now, sometimes you have to buy the books, but once you bought them, you had all the secrets. You knew everything. They practically gave you the actual source code used to write these things so that you could hook in your things. That's always the thing. It's called software hook. And Microsoft made it a point that they said those things were proprietary. They're very different. Almost immediately, Bill Gates was making other computer people very angry because of his perception of the value of what he did. It was new, because before it was very much a university sort of collegiate sharing, and that was how software really was. You might buy the tools, but by and large, you didn't have to buy the tools either. The tools were thrown in with the hardware as well, and a lot of people at that time got accustomed to it. Now, open source was kind of came from that, the continuation of that attitude. Anyway, so a Microsoft Office, for instance, Word, Excel, Access, all that stuff. It was tightly integrated with the OS, and it took advantage of hooks in the OS that Microsoft put in specifically for themselves, for those applications, so that their applications would always work a bit better. They also took the opportunity that if a competitor started threatening them, they would make changes in the operating system to break those packages that seemed like they were competitive. They did this a lot in the beginning. They got sued for it. Ultimately, Microsoft paved the way for making things irrelevant. The legal system works rather slow, and in doing that, you can come to dominate the market from almost a position of nothing before any lawsuits against you even become a serious problem. This is another thing that Here it is. Deal with consequence of anti-competitive practices with lawyers, and the whole point of your lawyers is to slow things down, and make it so that it really becomes irrelevant. Most of the companies that went up against Microsoft, due to uncompetitive practices, a lot of the big players in computers, Apple included, tried this stunt on occasion, and most of them there was two ways to fight Microsoft on this, and both were losing. Number one, you would go up against them, and then you'd just say, "Oh, screw it, let Microsoft have it." That was really the only thing that was successful. Otherwise, your company would go down, and you would have no money to continue the fight, and you would just go away. There was several key acquisitions made of companies being taken over by other companies simply to take over a lawsuit with Microsoft because they thought they might win. And most of them didn't. And not only did the original company basically go out of business, usually the company that bought them so they could say, "Ooh, let's stick it to Microsoft," they also usually died too. I could give you the companies, but you'd say, "Who are they?" And they go, "Exactly. That's the point. You don't know who they are because they're gone." Stupid. Don't fight it. Microsoft learned a very salient thing. Don't bother making a nice level playing field that governments and regulators want to create, because there's no point. You can just destroy everything. Landmine is how Microsoft chose to do it, and it was a very winning strategy. Very winning. You don't have to worry about being the best. You only have to worry about being ubiquitous and proprietary. These are tactics still being used. There's an interesting Oracle, Larry Ellison and Oracle. I'm sorry, Larry Ellison looks like the devil, and half the time he acts exactly that way too, because I think he saw what Microsoft was doing and say, "Hey, that's us too. We want to be them." And so they bought some really, quote, nice companies. Sun Microsystems was actually a very nice company, gave a lot of its stuff away. It was still successful. It did well. When they sold it, it went very well. Scott Neely, nice guy. Everybody knew it too. He was just a nice guy, and he got railroaded, let me tell you. Anyway, so Oracle sucked in a lot of things that had originally been kind of open source. Java had been open sourced by Sun Microsystems. When Oracle bought Sun Microsystems, the first thing it did was say, "Hey, look, we got Java. Now guess what? It ain't open source anymore. We're closing that sucker down. That belongs to us." Because that's not the way Oracle works. Oracle is proprietary. You want to play in their field, you play with them. Anyway, so I could tell you a whole bunch about Oracle from my experience having worked with their databases and things like that, and the kind of ways they kind of do tactics to try and reduce competition. Now that Oracle is becoming a solution provider itself, it used to be a tool provider. It provided the Oracle database. That was what it basically did for a long time. Then it said, wait a minute, we can make a lot more money making solutions built on Oracle. So they did that. The only problem is now they're competing with companies that use their tools to compete. And so they've already learned that they said, wait a minute, we're going to stop supporting some of these tools. We want our competition to go away. They can still buy our operating system, but they're going to have to, come up with their own freaking tools from here on out. We don't care. It's interesting. It's interesting when a company chooses to disable its product to a certain point because there's a business reason to do it. That's what business intelligence teaches you, is to say, you might have made a bad choice in the past, rectify it now before anything bad happens. Now there's going to be a third one of these. Oh my gosh, another video coming. See you there.